In the 2024 Carolinas Classic Chess Tournament, I defeated a Grandmaster in Classical Chess for the first time. Now, this is a big moment for any chess player at any time, but I was particularly proud of the fashion in which I was able to win. I got to play intuitive attacking chess in the style of the great Mikhail Tal. I opened the game here with pawn e4. My opponent, Grandmaster Julio Sedora, a great Philippine Grandmaster, responds with c5. We get knight f3, e6, d4, cd4, knight takes d4, a6, and now I play 5a3. This is a sideline that I stole straight off of Twitter and Grandmaster Nikos Natirlis, who has great threads on interesting opening ideas. I'm stopping the idea of bishop b4 so that after knight f6, I can just play knight c3, and it might not seem like this a3 move was so aggressive, but it is, because I'm going for a pawn storm in the fastest possible fashion. My opponent plays queen c7. I play f4, my first pawn advance. The idea is that d5 can always be met by pawn e5 with a nice position. So pawn to d6, stopping that, but now g4. The pawns keep coming. I have the idea of g5, and the computer even says you should play h6 here to deter g5. Instead, my opponent plays knight c6, giving me a free hand to play pawn to g5. The knight falls back to d7. I play bishop e3, developing b5 here, and then queen to e2. I love to develop my queen here in the Sicilian. I'm on the same file as my opponent's king, which can create some ideas, and I also keep my queen in position to come in and invade the light squares in some cases. So after queen e2, my opponent plays bishop to b7. I go ahead and castle queenside here, bishop to e7 for my opponent, pawn to h4, and knight c5. I think basically my Grandmaster opponent didn't really want to make the difficult decision to castle queenside, where he's definitely a little bit worse and gives up counterplay against my king because his king will also sit on the queen side, and he didn't want to castle kingside because then he's really walking into my attack. So the move knight c5 postpones the decision and leaves the king in the middle of the board. But now I go for the attack. I spent 30 minutes here and I played the move knight to f5. This is a really exciting sacrifice. It's very intuitive. I spent 30 minutes, but I could not calculate this at all, and it's not really the kind of sacrifice that you can calculate to the end. This move, knight f5, offers up the knight in return for a monster knight on d5 and the ability to open the e-file and try to get at the opponent's king. It's not the best move according to the computer. The computer likes pawn to f5 a little bit more, but it's a very, very strong move. The computer says that it is actually a nearly winning sacrifice, something like +2 according to the engine. So after knight f5, my opponent could have just castled and not taken the knight, but he does capture. I hop with my knight into d5 here, and the queen goes over to a5. Maybe queen c8 was a little bit better, but I understand my opponent pulling the queen over here to try and create counterplay against my king. The downside of queen a5 is that the queen is offsides and not able to help with the king's defense in the center of the board. After queen a5, I play pawn takes f5, so I'm opening up the e-file, and I have an idea of pawn f6. Where should my opponent's king go? He can go queenside or kingside. If queenside, it turns out that I have a basically winning continuation. Bishop d2. The queen is just about trapped because she can't go here because of this royal fork with the knight on b6. So you need to play b4, and I cannot capture because of the mate down here, but I can just play king b1, and I capture on the next move with a tremendous, and according to the chess engine, winning position. So my opponent instead plays castles kingside, which I think was the best decision in a very difficult spot. I play pawn to f6. I'm trying to get my opponent to open the g-file, but of course a grandmaster is never going to make things so easy for me. You're not going to capture here, let me recapture, because you're just asking for me to checkmate you on the g-file, and I will step in with checkmate on g7. So my opponent is much more resourceful. After pawn f6, he offers me my piece back. He plays rook over to e8, a really good practical decision. If I go and capture the bishop and get my piece back, after knight takes, rook takes, I need to move this attacked rook on h1. I step up. I've got my material back. Material is equal here, but my opponent's pieces are suddenly all breathing so much better, and his king is the safest it's been like all game. So instead, I decide that I'm not taking my piece back. I'm going to keep attacking. I play the move pawn takes g7. Now, this move is actually a mistake because very computery moves like queen g4 or bishop g2 were evidently better and close to winning according to the computer. But this move is only a mistake if my opponent finds a brilliant move right here. That move is knight to b4. After knight b4, he's exploiting 2 pins here. There's 1 pin against this rook on h1 and another pin against the a1 square. And according to the computer, this is equal. There's a perpetual check. After pawn takes b4, queen check, the king steps up, the queen captures here. This knight is hanging here, so I defend it. He trades it off so that he can now capture this pawn that the knight was defending. And it's a perpetual check. The queen chases my king around. I can't get out of the perpetual check, and my opponent evidently needs to take the draw by perpetual because I still have big attacking ideas over here if black slows down. Instead, though, fortunately for me, my opponent did not find this crazy brilliant knight b4 move, and instead he played pawn b4, still trying for counterplay against my king, but this is too slow. In this position, I'm able to play bishop takes c5. The point is, this knight was defending d3, and now I just want to play queen h5, bishop d3, and deliver checkmate on h7. Without the knight being here to capture my bishop when it comes to d3, black is going to be busted. So, my opponent plays queen takes c5, my queen jumps in, intending bishop d3, and just checkmate. Knight e5. A really great defensive try from my opponent. Absolutely the only thing you can try to hold this position. Fortunately for me, I had seen this when I captured on c5, and I had a refutation ready. If I capture this knight with pawn takes c5, then black gets to capture my knight on d5, bishop d3. I'm checkmating, right? No, my opponent has a great resource, bishop e4. And the point is, if I capture this, black has a fork to win the piece back and save the game. But backing up, after knight e5, I do not capture this knight right away. Instead, I have an intermediate move. I play pawn takes b4. I had seen this refutation when I captured on c5, and now my opponent is completely busted. The point is simply that the queen is hit, and she doesn't have a good square to go to. It goes to f2, but now the bishop is attacking d5, but the queen is no longer helping with the attack. So I can just capture on e5, and after bishop takes d5, I can recapture with rook takes d5. And I have won a piece back here. I'm actually up several pawns, and my attack continues. At this point, I knew I was winning this game if I could just not blunder in time trouble. So after rook takes d5, queen check, I block with the rook, queen e4, threatening this rook down here. Now, I could actually have played bishop d3, going for the checkmate and sacrificing the rook. It turns out it works out, but I was a little nervous about bishop d3, queen captures check, rook blocks, bishop takes g5. I saw this trick, realized I couldn't capture here because of the pin, and I would lose my queen. So I got nervous, but I could still capture here, and then after the queen pulls back, I can go in with queen h6, and I still checkmate. But I found a simpler idea. After the queen threatens my rook here on h1, what I do is I just play bishop g2. Now, everything is defended, and I've skewered the queen and rook right here. So I could just capture the rook shortly and be winning, but I found a better way to finish the game. The queen pulls back to e5, I pull my rook over, and I threaten checkmate on f7. The queen captures my pawn on g7, but rook takes f7. A pretty tactic, not too difficult, but this did get a brilliant exclamation point from Game Review. The point is that if the queen captures, I have bishop d5, pinning and winning the queen. Instead, my opponent played queen g6, but now I just trade queens, and this rook is defending 2 things. It's overloaded, so I played rook takes e7, and my opponent, losing a full piece, resigned here, giving me my first win against a grandmaster.